Colin Kaepernick's protest against racial injustice seems to be gaining traction.
This was the knee that started a movement, a conversation about racism. And this was the backlash.
Get that son of a bitch off the field right now. Out. He's fired. He's fired!
4 years on, 11 England players took a knee on Sunday in support of racial justice. And this was the booing backlash from their own fans. America's culture war clashes are now here on our green and pleasant pitches. And today, number 10 refused to condemn the booing of England players. And they're backed by the backbenchers. Tory MP Lee Anderson said taking a knee was a big mistake, while the Ashfield MP said all forms of racism should be stamped out. This was not the way. And for the first time in my life, I will not be watching my beloved England team. But the spotlight on racism today was taken over by the cricket. Last night, Ollie Robinson was suspended and placed under investigation for racist tweets he posted nearly a decade ago, for which he recently apologised but hasn't fully explained. But the Culture Secretary Oliver Dowden waded in and preempted the investigation, saying the ECB had gone over the top in suspending him. For years, English cricket has tried to get the national team to mirror the grassroots, to push the boundaries, and so this could be a setback.
British-born guys, girls want to back up their country, and then, you know, once you do hear something like this come across, you're like, are we actually supporting the right country here?
Nahid, Junior and Sajjad are involved in the National Cricket League, a grassroots tournament based in East London. So who do you agree with on this, the ECB or Oliver Dowden?
Suspending him and then doing an investigation, I think that's the right way to do it. If he, it comes out that he has actually learned from his, experiences since those tweets, and everything is fine, then they can, allow him to play again.
Love for the game will never leave me, but to see that we're still in this struggling era, there hasn't been a West Indian cricket player, British-born West Indian player for a very, very long time, and that needs to change.
So where next for this national debate on racism and sport? The Euros begin this Friday, and manager Gareth Southgate says the team are determined more than ever to take the knee, an historic gesture that predates Black Lives Matter, despite what the critics say.
The negative voices, the narrow voices, the minds that don't want to be educated, the minds that would rather listen to others who don't have those experiences, are the ones who are driving this narrative that is against what the players are trying to achieve.
Today marks 1 year since the statue of Edward Colston was toppled in Bristol, sparking this very conversation. The question now is whether after protests, a race report, taking a knee, tweets and all, the dialogue has moved along or simply generated a backlash.
Kieran Moodley reporting. Well, earlier I spoke to the Conservative MP Andrew Bridgen, and I began by asking him whether it was the government's place to intervene when there was still a live investigation.
I haven't actually read his tweets, but I do have considerable sympathy with Ollie Robinson. It's quite a long time ago. Personally, I've often thought that being of a certain age that things I may or may not have done as a very young man are lost in the mists of time, thank goodness, because social media didn't exist in those days. And I do have some sympathy. I think an apology would probably suffice.
It's perhaps unfortunate at the same time, with football, number 10 seems to be reluctant to criticise England fans for booing players for taking the knee in the past couple of games at least, at the same time supporting players taking the knee. Isn't that a contradiction?
I personally am very sceptical about footballers taking the knee. They're free to do so, but it's synonymous with support for the Black Lives Matter movement. And if you look on their website, their declared political aims are defunding the police, abolishing prisons, open borders, and the destruction of the Western capitalist economy. They're nothing I can support. And of course, the footballers are free to express their views, but equally free the fans must be to express their disapproval.
What about Marcus Rashford, somebody who is much appreciated, not least by the government? What do you think of him taking the knee?
He's free to express his views as he wishes.
But you've just said that you think taking the knee illustrates some support for some degree of extremism. Therefore, you're accusing Marcus Rashford of being an extremist.
I think he's misguided in doing that. He's done great work for a large proportion of our population. He's championed many causes and he's very popular.
How can you be condemning what he believes in and at the same time say what a wonderful man he is?
Well, it's quite possible to admire some things and campaigns that people carry out without agreeing with them on every point, John.
Andrew Bridgen, thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you.
Well, I've also been talking with the anti-racism campaigner, Lord Woolley, and I asked him first whether Oliver Dowden's criticism of the Cricket Board, as the Culture Secretary that he is, was out of step with a broader movement for equality in sport.
I know Oliver Dowden, and he is a good man. I think in this aspect he's got it wrong. That we need these bold and honest conversations about systemic racism and abuse and about what young people do and what young adults do. What the cricketer has done is unacceptable. I mean, I've seen some of the things that he's said, and they belong into far-right, white supremacist, horrible nature of the things he's said. They were not acceptable then, and they're not acceptable now. And we need to be on the right side of these arguments and giving a message that is relevant and proportionate in tackling its severity.
There have been two instances of fans booing whilst the team were taking the knee at international football matches. The latest last night when Marcus Rashford captained the side.
Well, all I know is there are some people, and I saw the tweet from an MP, I think Lee Anderson, who said he's boycotting because these footballers are taking the knee. Taking the knee is an admirable act that says to our society we must confront racism. These young men, black and white, are asking all of us to reflect, particularly our institution. They should not be derided, they should be applauded. And I hope that those people that are booing on the terraces are ashamed of themselves, because it's not wrong to confront systemic racism. You know, last year, John, we had the year of talk from George Floyd and Black Lives Matter. I hope this year is the year of action.
Lord Woolley, there are some people in government who argue that taking the knee does show support for radical movements such as Black Lives Matter, quote.
Look, with the Black Lives Matter movement, it's an historic movement. I think there are splinter elements that are a little bit unsavoury, but let's not lose sight, and the government should not lose sight on the Black Lives movement, which is civil rights, that will help educate, that will help